Hey friend, welcome back to Ashes to Aligned. Whether this is your first episode or you've been riding this wave with me since the beginning, I'm so glad you're here. If you're exhausted from loving someone who's struggling with addiction, if you're burned out from trying to keep everyone else afloat, if you're starting to realize you're sinking too, this one's for you. I want to start by apologizing for skipping a week. My goal has been to release a new episode each week, but I'm starting to realize I may need to reevaluate that and, at least for now, release new episodes every other week. I'm trying to put together a couple of courses, as well as figure out the best way to create an online community to provide continual support. I need to get my website updated with additional resources. I haven't been posting anything to social media to get the word out that this post is available, other than a quick blip on Facebook each week. Plus, it's summer, which here in Eastern North Carolina normally means a lot of time on the river. I think I've only been on the water twice this year. So I'm trying to fit in some fun family time, all while working a demanding and draining full-time job. And I kind of hit a wall last week. I got sick. I ended up having to call out from work a day and a half. And I was having what felt like kind of the beginnings of some panic attacks and really bizarre dreams. When I shared the dreams with Gray, he's my youngest son who has almost 7 years clean and has done a tremendous amount of work on himself and healing from trauma. He thought about it for a while and he called me back at work and said, "You don't have to respond. I just want you to think about this. I think your dreams are your inner child trying to tell you that you've been neglecting your playful side and that you are not doing anything to have fun. And like I said, I know you're at work. We can talk about this later. I just wanted to put that out there for you to think about." And I started laughing and said, "Well, there's no doubt they're telling me I'm neglecting something. I mean, these dreams, I suddenly had a puppy in one of them. I don't know how long I'd had it, but I was freaking out because I realized I hadn't taken it outside, not one time. And then in another dream, our old cats had come back to life. I realized it had been like 2 years since I fed them. And in another one, this 3-year-old was walking around my house and I was freaking out again because I couldn't remember ever feeding this child. All of those dreams were obviously focused on neglecting basic needs that keep either an animal or a person alive. And so I agreed with Gray that my dreams were telling me I was neglecting something, but I felt like they were telling me I was neglecting things I really needed to get done, like my 24 taxes and some of my other business paperwork. Two very different takes. And he thinks I need to have more fun. I think I need to be more disciplined on my business side of things. The truth is, we're probably both right. There are some things I need to handle, but there's also a part of me, that little girl inside, who's waving her arms and begging for me to stop once again carrying everything long enough to just be, to play, to breathe, to rest. What struck me the most, though, was hearing all of that from him. I mean, this is the son I used to lie awake in bed praying for, the one I tried so hard to save. And he's now holding up a mirror reminding me to take care of myself. It's wild to witness your child's healing in real time, and then realize they're offering you the things you once offered them. It's like we've come full circle. So I'm learning to be open to listening, trying to pause, trying to add more play. And I'm definitely listening when wisdom shows up, even when it's coming from the kid who used to sneak out at night and steal my car. All right, now that we've caught up, let's dive into today's episode. I want you to picture this. Your person, the addict or alcoholic that you love, is caught in the middle of a pit of quicksand. They're flailing, they're stuck, slowly being swallowed whole. And you, with all your big love and your beautiful heart, don't hesitate for a second. You jump in after them because that's what we do, right? We love, we fix, we fight, we rescue. And at first, it feels noble, even heroic. You think, I'm strong enough, I'll pull us both out. Quicksand doesn't care about your strength, doesn't care that you're a good mom, a devoted wife, or a loyal sister. And the harder you fight, the faster you sink. At first, it's just exhaustion, sleepless nights, a pit in your stomach every time the phone rings. Then it's missed work, canceled plans, ignoring your own health, financial strain. And before you know it, you're not the helper anymore. You're stuck too. Welcome to the trap no one talks about. Now let's zoom out for a minute because while you're stuck in the quicksand, there are people gathered around the edge of that pit. And let's talk about them. They're your inner circle. These are the ones who love you the most. It's your partner, your siblings, maybe your parents. They see you drowning. And because they love you, they start to wade in too. They mean well, but now they're stuck. Stress levels rise, finances dwindle, everyone's walking on eggshells, no one can breathe. Now it's not just your addict who's suffering, it's the whole family. And then you've got the middle circle, your friends, extended family. They're kind of on the periphery of all the chaos. They see what's happening and they try to help, but they don't go too far. I mean, they might toss you a rope or a board or a kind word. They say things like, you have to take care of yourself. You can't keep living like this. Not because they don't care, but because watching you sink is painful and they still have something you've lost: self-preservation. Eventually, some of them stop calling or inviting you to come and hang out, not out of cruelty, but because it hurts too much watching someone they love disappear. And then you got this outer circle. It's that crowd that's always just kind of watching: coworkers, acquaintances, church friends, even your barista that asks you every morning, "How you doing?" These folks, they've got their phones out, metaphorically or, sometimes literally. They're gossiping, they're judging, they're offering opinions from the safety of the sidelines. "Why don't you just let go? It's not your problem." That's what happens when you enable. From the outside, it all looks simple. Like they're standing on solid ground. They're not covered in mud and desperation. And to be fair, they're not wrong. They're just not in it. And that's what creates a lot of conflict. This is where the emotional whiplash hits. You're caught between desperately wanting someone to understand and knowing they can't. Not really, because they haven't stood where you're standing. They don't know what it's like to hold your breath every time there's a knock at the door. They don't know that ache of wondering if today is the day you lose them for good. And maybe, if we get real honest, a small part of you resents their peace because you wish you could let go. You know that's probably what needs to happen. But there's another part of you, that deep, desperate part that still believes, if I just love harder, if I help more, if I hold on tighter, maybe they'll finally reach for my hand. And that's where it all unravels, because you're waiting to be their reason to recover while they're still trying to decide if they want recovery. Here's the fact I had to face, and maybe it's one you're facing too. You can't save someone by drowning. You can't anchor them in recovery if you're being pulled under by their chaos. Your first job isn't to fix them, it's to save yourself. And I know how backward that feels. Because when I finally climbed out of that pit, when I stopped jumping in after my sons, I felt guilty. I felt selfish. But here's what I learned. Once I was back on solid ground, I could finally breathe. I could think clearly, although I felt like it took months before I could be truly rational. I was able to start responding rather than reacting. And from there, I could hold out a steady hand and say, I'm here when you're ready. Not from panic, not from fear, but from love, like real love. My goal is to always be honest and real with you, and that includes saying this work isn't once and done. It's ongoing, it's layered. And I want to reiterate again, I know what I'm saying sounds simple, but it's not easy. Had an interesting few weeks with my oldest son, the one who's still in the wind, as I call it. And I've had to constantly coach myself and remind myself of everything that I teach for the past week and a half. Think it was the last episode where I mentioned that our recovery doesn't mean we don't ever hurt. I have moments where I break down and I cry, but the difference is I don't stay in that place now. I feel what I'm feeling. I cry, I grieve, I pray, and then I pull myself together and refocus on my next right steps. Some days are definitely easier than others. Some days I have to coach myself all day long. And I've been going through a lot of that the past few weeks. I woke up one Thursday morning, it was almost 2 weeks ago, and I had a voicemail from Dusty. He left it around like 1:30 in the morning. And he said, "Hey, Mom, I know it's late. I just felt like I needed to call you and tell you I love you and I miss you. I miss Gray. This is my new number. I'll talk to you later. Love you." Because he specifically mentioned Gray, I forwarded the voicemail to Gray, and he called me a few minutes later and said, "Send me that number." I texted Dusty back and told him how nice it was to wake up to that call, and I loved him, and I would try to call him on my lunch hour if I got one. Well, pretty much all day, it was a constant battle in my mind to focus on work and not obsess over Dusty. Thinking things like, did he call because there was something wrong? I found myself wanting to analyze every word of his voicemail, try to get inside his head, figure out what he was thinking. Is he reaching out because he's ready to do something different? Um, just his wording, he sounded really tired, which is not unusual. I mean, he's homeless, he sleeps on a trolley. I'm sure he's exhausted all the time. But the message was just a little different than his typical, "Hey, Mom, this is my new number. I love you." I tried to call on my way home for lunch, but I got a weird message like the call didn't actually go through. So I called on my way back to work. It rang, but he didn't answer. So I called Gray and said, "Did you try to call Dusty?" And he said, "Yeah, we talked about 30 minutes." I'm like, "What? Why didn't you tell me?" He kind of, well, typical guy reaction. "Oh, well, I thought I had. I'm sorry. I was driving to an appointment while we were talking and I had to go to my appointment and I just thought I'd called you." Now, to emphasize how huge that moment was, that was the first time they've talked in almost 5 years. Grace tried to call before when he has a number, but Dusty never answers. Not only did Dusty answer this time, but they talked for 30 minutes. And here I go, spiraling again. What did he say? What did you guys talk about? Is everything okay? Apparently, they had some really good conversation. Gray said one thing he told Dusty was, all those times we went to rehab, we just talked about surface level shit. They went together a couple of times after they both ended up in California, but Gray knows how it goes after having gone dozens of times. And Dusty's been there so many times and even worked for a treatment center that he believes there's nothing he can gain from going back again. But Gray said, you always just scratch the surface. You got to dig deep. You've got to be willing to be vulnerable and you got to get to the root of the problem, not just scratch the surface. He said Dusty got real quiet and admitted that Gray was making a valid point and it was something for him to consider. As soon as I heard that, it was like hope just wrapped me in its grips. And I wanted to call every 5 minutes until I got him on the phone. I wanted to text. I was just like, I felt myself losing control again. I had to stop myself. I had to get quiet and centered, remind myself that he will take the necessary steps when he's ready. He knows there are people who want to help him when he's ready. All he has to do is make the call. I reminded myself again of what I teach. It's his choice. I don't want to put any extra pressure on him. I don't want to do anything that interferes with his processes, his thought processes at the moment. One thing I realized after several years into my healing and my recovery journey was how proud I was of myself for taking control of my life, for building myself step by step a roadmap to get out of the hell I had been living in. It's not possible for someone else to do our work for us, but if it was, then I would have been robbed of that sense of pride and accomplishment that I have for having done the work. I would have been cheated out of the opportunity to rebuild my confidence over the past several years. I can look back now and see how far I've come, and I'm so damn proud of myself that I don't know. I would imagine Gray feels something similar. I sure hope he does. A few nights after this, a neighbor at dinner, after hearing the Cliff Notes version of our journey, pulled his jaw up off the floor and looked at Gray and said, "Damn, man, I'm really proud of you." Before that night, he only knew bits and pieces of Gray's story. I think he might have known Gray was in recovery, and that was it. But that night, Gray was telling more of his story, and he was saying things like, I used to live behind a Target, and I realized I wanted shit to change, so I made different choices. I want Dusty to be able to come on this podcast and start sharing his story and have that same powerful sense of pride from taking ownership of his life, from making tough decisions, from making the calls to doing the hard work, dig in deep like Grace said he needed to do to really heal. I can't make that happen. It has to come from within him. So rather than obsessing over Dusty, had to coach myself and get myself back to focusing on my next right thing, which was that day to go to the river, spend the night with Gray and Kat and her parents, go fishing, melt in the heat and humidity, and then come back home and get to work on my mission. And to kind of wrap this all up, I got a text from Dusty over the weekend, just a couple days ago. Back almost 2 weeks ago, when he first called, I sent him a picture of Gray's handlebar mustache, which he's so proud of, but just makes me laugh. And I thought it would make Dusty laugh too. So I sent it to him, but he didn't respond. Shocking, I know. But it didn't look like my text with the pictures were actually going through. So the middle of last week, I sent a text asking, "Do you still have this phone?" He replied a day or two later that he did. And so I asked if he got the pictures. He actually has red receipts on. So I know he saw my last text last Wednesday or Thursday, but he didn't reply until Sunday. When he did, he said, "I didn't get pictures of Gray." And then he said, "Talking to him was just mind blowing the other day. I told him I couldn't believe how mature he sounded. I swear it was like talking to dad again. He's grown up so much, and I just wish dad was able to tell because I know he would be so incredibly proud." And I agree, but I know his dad is incredibly proud. As for me, even now, even years after doing all of this work, I still have moments where I slip, where I start grasping again, hoping, spinning. But the difference now, I catch it, I notice when I'm slipping into the quicksand again, and I know how to pull myself back to solid ground. That's why I say this work is simple, but it's not easy. It takes daily intention, it takes grace, and it takes a hell of a lot of self compassion. So if you're tired of trying to explain your pain, if you feel judged, misunderstood, or just completely alone in this mess, let me say this: you're not crazy, you're not weak, you're just in deeper than they are. And that's why this space exists. So you don't have to explain anymore. You can just be. This is where we untangle the mess, where we stop carrying a ginormous load that was never ours to carry in the first place, and where we find our footing again. If today's episode landed, if you're stuck in quicksand, leave a comment, send a message, share this episode with someone else who maybe needs it. And before you move on with your day, take just a few minutes and ask yourself, what do I need right now? Then honor the answer that comes to you because your healing matters too.